Hello and welcome, my name is Elmer alias Short, and I would like to show you a reproduction of the second generation sound card by Gottlieb and Mylstar, which has been used in games like the three Stooges, M.A.C.H, and a couple of prototype games like Skrew Loose and Liz. This second generation soundboard is much more complicated than the first generation, which was used in Qbert and a couple of other games. Because it uses more complicated components for generating more complex sounds. So before I go into a demonstration and I will just play out those sounds on those speakers here from the FPGA, I would like to very quickly browse through the schematics which I found in those instruction manuals and explain you how it's supposed to work. So let's take a look. So on high level, what we see is on that card is that there is basically three sound generating entities. The first entity is a CPU, 6502 Rockwell, which is just working with a digital analog converter to make sounds, typical sounds. Then there is a second CPU, a 6502 as well, with a little bit of more memory here, which is controlling a programmable sound generator on that side. So this is playing tunes, so sound tunes. And then we have an SPO 250, which is a voice synthesizer. And this component is producing the voice. Let's start to look into the interfacing logic. The way the video system is communicating sound codes over to these soundboards. We take a look here, there is 8 digital lines coming into the soundboards. They're connected back to the video system, and the video system is putting out the sound code, which is representing one specific sound to be played by the soundboard. And it works in such a way that if all those 8 lines are 1 so high, there is basically no strobe coming in here, so that would be 0. That corresponds to the idle sound code. If now one of those lines or several of those lines are going to 0, which means there is a valid sound code on that bus here, then there is a strobe produced here. And this strobe is latching the sound code into that latch here. And it also triggers that there is an interrupt generated on both CPUs. Here on that line for the first CPU and on that line for the second CPU. The CPU then is going out and is fetching the sound code from that register, and then it's clearing this D flip-flop, which basically releases the interrupt on those two CPUs. As you can see, this latch here is the one that is corresponding to the upper CPU, and there is another latch here which is corresponding to the second CPU, the lower CPU. They're both having their interrupt D flip-flops here. So that's for the upper one, that's for the lower one. So once again, if there is a new sound code coming in, the sound sample is latched here. And also in the same time this D flip-flop is clocked and the interrupt line is pulled low for both of them. Then the CPU is reading out the sound code from that one or that one, and then it's releasing its interrupt line again here by clearing it on that side and on that side. So this means if a sound code comes in, the interrupt on both CPUs is telling the CPUs, okay, there is a sound to be played, and it fetches the sound code so it knows which kind of sound to play. If we now take a look at the easy CPU, the lower one here, then we figure out that the Rockwell 6502 is coming with 8 kilobytes of ROM. This is where the code is sitting for the CPU, and also 1 kilobyte of RAM. That's that one here. And there is just an address decoder here, which is depending on the address space, selecting those components. Also, it has here a 2-channel analog to digital converter. The analog device is 7528J. That is a 2-channel device, and there is a little bit of caveat on that one here, because what you see is that the A0 line is selecting between the first ADC or the second ADC. And you see that the first ADC is actually setting up here with that amplifier a reference voltage for the second one. So what that means is that you can set up the amplitude for the second DSC. This means that you can amplitude modulate the output, which is an improvement over the first generation cards. It's basically a multiplication of the two samples. So you can envelope shape the whole thing here. And that's about it. So this one is producing all those sounds like, you will hear it then things falling down, things chirping, these kind of things. So that's the job of that CPU here. The output of that analog digital converter is then just amplified, and it goes then into an adder, an analog summation circuit here with that op-amp here. So there are more channels coming in from the upper CPU. If we take a look at the more sophisticated CPU, then we figure out that that one has 2 banks of 8 kilobytes, so in total 16 kilobytes of ROMs, because it has to run the programmable sound generator, so it's playing the tunes, as well as generating the speech. And it also has a 1K of RAM on that side here, and a little bit more complex address decoder because there is more peripherals sitting on that one here. Now, one important thing, and that took me quite some time to figure out, is this guy is getting a tick reference or a time base from a timing logic on that side here. On the first generation soundboard, there was this riot component, which was the RAM, I/O, and timer. So this one was giving a timeline or time base to the CPU. This has now here on the second gen card been reproduced by some kind of discrete counter logic. And how it works is that the CPU on the data bus, once it's selected, can send out a seed for this counter here. And then when the seed is loaded, the counter counts up until it overflows. And when it overflows, it actually generates a non-maskable interrupt on that CPU here, telling the CPU the timer has elapsed, the period is over, the time period is over, do something. And this is repeated all the time. So when the CPU is, for example, sending out a given tone to the programmable sound generator, it has to do this with a given beat or a given cycle period. And that's what a rhythm, maybe I should call it a rhythm. Yeah, this is then generated by the timing logic by always an overrun loading a new value in from the CPU and on elapsing giving it a non-maskable interrupt. So that's how that portion works, and that's only accounting for the upper CPU for that one here. The non-maskable interrupt on the lower CPU is also controlled by that CPU here. So this CPU can tell this guy, for example, don't play this sound code. Because this is the sound code that I'm responsible for. So that one is, in a sense, the main CPU here, which is having this one here as a slave, the CPU on that side. Now when we look into the peripherals, we figure out that there is quite some heavy stuff sitting here. There's an AY3-8913. This is a programmable sound generator which is generating 3 channels. And there is a second one here. So in total there is 6 channels. These are the analog outputs here, 6 in total. And the CPU is writing in the different tone characteristics over those ledges here. So that's the data, that's the control. And let's take a look into the data sheet and just spend a couple of words on how that one is working. It's a quite standard component. So that's the AY3-8913, and there is 2 more of those which are a little bit larger. We're basically running that one here. And this one has just a pure sound generation capability, doesn't have any I/O capability. There is a very good picture which on a high level describes how it works. What you can see here is that there is a bidirectional buffer which is writing into configuration registers inside the programmable sound generator. And there is also an address latch decoder. So how it works is if you want to write in different characteristics or different values into those registers, which are then steering the sound generation portion, you need to first put in an address, so you know which register you want to write to, and then you're writing in the actual data. That's the way it's done. It's basically a memory mapped interface. And what you can see here is that in the first 6 registers, there is the frequency for channel A, B, and C for the tone generators. So that's basically the frequency of the tone that should be played. And you can do this in a coarse way, you can do this in a fine way, you can combine those two. Then you have those 3 tone generators here which are putting channel A, B, and C out. So they're generating a rectangular wave basically with that frequency here. You can also see that there is a possibility to generate noise, where you can put a noise period in, and there is a noise generator here. And you can then with a mixer determine which kind of channels you would like to mix together to play out here, A, B, and C. So you can enable 1, 2, 3 combination of noise, and that's basically what you have in this enable register. So for example, you can enable noise on A, B, C, those are the channels, or tones on A, B, C, and you can mix them together. You can also configure the amplitude, so the volume, that you can also use for modulating the volume if you want to. And then you can set up an envelope period register here, which means that the envelope of those channels here can be adjusted. Again, this is an envelope modulation thing. And then you can set up different shapes and cycles for the envelope, typical things. And if you take a look at the diagram, then this is typically how it looks like. So you have a couple of registers, and depending on how you set them up, you can either put in continue, attack, alternate, hold, and so on and so forth. That's just how the amplitude, the envelope, is changing with a given period that you can also configure. The sound that you get out with that one is well known from the hardware from the 80s. It's typically, you know, Commodore 64, Nintendo Entertainment System, Game Boy. That's this typically kind of sounds that you can do with that. The datasheet here is quite accurate. Tells you exactly what to use. Tells you exactly how the counters have to count, how those registers have to be concatenated to get the right values. You can see here the different, the differences between the different devices. There are 3 different devices. So that one was quite easy to do, and I think that I have it quite closely. The SPO250, that guy, that's the really complicated one here. That's a voice synthesizer. Unlike the SCO1 Vortex that we had on the first generation card, this one is needing much more data to come in here to produce some voice. And this is because it's actually vocal track modeled. Let's take a look at the datasheet and see how it works. I also have it here. The problem with that voice synthesizer is that the documentation is very poor. SPO250 application manual from General Instruments. It really just on a high level explains how it's supposed to work. It doesn't really go into the details. So it was a lot of trial and error, and I think there is still a couple of bugs inside that I have to try to figure out. So how it's supposed to work. You can see here that there is an impulse generator, and this impulse generator is generating impulses with a given amplitude that you can configure. And you can also configure how fast and with what kind of frequency those impulses should come out with the pitch period here. If you make voice, this one is up here, and these impulses are going into a couple of filters. There are 6 finite impulse response filters that are then producing the voice. And then you DA convert it, and then there is a filter here, which you don't see, 5 kHz filter, which is taking off all the noise components that you have inside the result, and then you get it out on the speaker. You can also configure it unvoiced, which means that you have noise that you can modulate with those kind of filters. The interface for the SPO250 is weird because it uses sign magnitude representation for the coefficients. There are 6 filter stages, and each state has 2 coefficients which you're writing in. For example, the first filter stage has B1, F1 as coefficients, and you see the lower 7 bits are the coefficient, the highest one is then the sign. So positive sign is 1, 0 is a negative sign. So you can't really work with those in an FPGA, so you have to convert those to 2's complement and then work with those. The amplitude for the impulse generator is either amplitude and exponent, so that's scientific notation. So that means if you get an amplitude in, you have to shift this according to the exponent. Or if you're using direct data mode, which is a second mode, it can run in, it also comes sign and magnitude. And then there is the pitch, which tells you impulse, how long to wait, impulse, how long to wait. And the repeat tells you how often you should repeat that pitch period. So, for example, if pitch is 2, you get a sample, you wait. You get a sample, you wait. If you have a repeat of 4, you would repeat it 4 times. This bit is telling you if you're using it voiced or unvoiced, as I explained before. And those here are just all these coefficients, which are coming in with, as I said, 7 bits of coefficient and 1 sign. And these 7 bits are with a ROM internally approximated to a 9-bit value, which is basically just a linear approximation. And the content of this ROM is also in the datasheet here. It's that kind of table here. Then you can see directly if you have unvoiced sources, you just have the amplitude coming here from the noise generator, or the impulse generator is either taking the pitch into account, then the repeat here would be 5, and the amplitude that you set up. And then this is running through these 6 filters here, where each filter is driven by 2 coefficients, B1, F1 until B6, F6. And that's how each filter stage looks like. So here you come in from the impulse generator, if this is the first stage, and then they just daisy chain together. And here you have the coefficient BT, FT, where T is 1 to 6. And this is just a delay. The whole thing runs with a sample period of 100 microseconds, so 10 kilohertz. That's what you read out from the pulse width, the DAC in the end. That's also part of the datasheet. And you see this one is multiplied by 2, so you have to shift it. These multipliers here are, since we're running basically in a fixed point environment on the FPGA, you have to make sure that you move those back, so you shift those back so you don't overrun, so it doesn't grow over the filter stages. Yeah, you get a sample in, you see the sample on the output. With the next clock, you get the sample back, you multiply it, you add it up, and then you shift it through all the time. That's what you do 6 times. So you see, each of those has a transfer function, and the transfer function is basically multiplication of all of those. And then in the end, you should multiply this with an amplitude, with an amplification factor. So I've been doing this in the FPGA, so I have been doing this filter stage once. I have been just replicating it 6 times. I load this over the interface, there's parameters in. I change the parameters by the ROM, so the quantization, the filter quantization table. I generate those, 2 different ones, where really this one is the important one. This one I've tried a little, but it doesn't sound really good because you don't really know what kind of feedback polynomial is here to get the randomness. Yeah, in the end I put a low pass filter to get the high frequency noise components out of the signal. So what I would like to start now is to play a couple of tunes with the FPGA board, and I will start with the sound CPU, with that one here. Just playing out regular sounds. This is basically quite similar to what we have on the first generation sound card. So that is, you will even hear sounds which are quite similar to the keyboard sounds. So let's go back here. This is my evaluation board, Spartan 3. I only have the soundboard now in that FPGA here. I'm using this DAC again, it's a 12-bit converter. 4 channels, I just use 2 channels where I have the sounds on that one and the speech and programmable sound generators or tunes on that one here. The lower 4 bits of the sound bus I put in here, and the higher bits of the sound bus, so the 4 most significant bits, I swap through here, you see. So this would be 0, 1, 2, 3, and as it only uses 64 sound codes, I go to 0 again, because I'm having the camera in my hand here, so I can't use both here. And with the rotation here, I play the sound, basically. You see also the LEDs blinking here. That's basically the LED of the upper CPU, which just shows, where is it here? Just says, hey, I'm happy, I'm running, so that's a good sign. And then I coupled the output just up to the speaker here. There's nothing else on the table beside that one here. So the first CPU for the sounds, I just have here sound sample code number 1 on that one here. That sounds like this. Now let's take the next one. Just going through. Now I have 3. Now I go to 4. I go to 5. 6. 7. That one is well known, right? That's when the ball is falling on Hubert's head. Now let's swap up to 8, get those back. 9. this one. Seems to be a dog or something. And there should be 2 more. I have to go up with this one. I'm in the next rank. Some kind of horn. Let's go up 1 more. I think that was it. So that was basically this first CPU here. And you might have realized, if you're an expert, that was the 3 Stooges that you were hearing. I put those into those ROMs here. So now we go up to this CPU, and I would like to get the tunes out, the startup tunes from 3 Stooges on those programmable sound generators. So let me go up to this one here. That's now the B.S.G, the sound generator. Let me go up 1 more. That was one of the startup tunes. The interesting thing to note here is that, and that took me a lot of time to figure out, is that it actually has, it runs on 3 channels. So it uses 1 for the percussion, this and 2 for the tunes, for this and so on and so forth. And then in the back there is a 4th line, and this line was wrong all the time. And I figured out after long searching that this is actually coming from the voice, from the speech synthesizer. So what I do now is I play now the tune once more, and with that pattern I can take the B.S.G away and just have the voice synthesizer running. And there you should hear that there is 1 more line which is running in the back. It's a little bit, it's more silent because I'm not able to amplify it up because I only have 12-bit resolution here. I would need to do this externally or take a 16-bit DAC. But you will be able to hear it, so I just tune it up a bit. And then in the middle of the tune, I press the button to get the B.S.G taken away. Now listen. That's the voice synthesizer. I've heard, so the voice synthesizer is really playing with. So let's go for the next tune. This one here. That's the voice synthesizer. Should be a little bit louder, but as I said, I can't really amplify it anymore. I need to get a 16-bit DAC. I do it once more, and now I take the SPO. So that's the SPO in the back. Last time because it's so nice. Okay, a couple of more tunes from the B.S.G. Let's step through. Oh, that was already the voice synthesizer. Okay, I think that was the sample so far from the B.S.G, at least what 3 Stooges is using. Now we're looking into the SPO, this one here, and I think there will be most criticism about this one because I think I still have to tune it a little, but I've never heard the original, so I don't know how it sounds. So let's take a look at it. I will have to go to 2, there should be some sound codes. Just see. Yeah. Once more. Let's try another code. just see, what is this? Just playing a couple of sounds. Sometimes you hear this clicking sound. That's the low-pass filter in the end, which is a bezel. I will have to experiment a little bit more with that. Maybe make it a little bit steeper and pull the cutoff frequency closer to 2-3 kilohertz. So that's now with a low-pass filter in the end. I think what I can also do is I can just play the sound without the low-pass filter. I would need to load a new bitstream for that one. Let me just log in real quick here and put a new bitstream down. So let me just get a new bitstream. Here I have one prepared without the low-pass filter, so straight out of the 6 filter stages. Program. So now let's see. This is now without the low-pass filter in the end, and you hear a lot of high frequency noise. That's how it sounds when you have it pure. So you see, you hear this. You really hear this kind of scratching, high components in there. That doesn't really sound good. Let's compare this one, for example, with the one with the low-pass filter in. I just pull the bitstream down. So CPU is up.
Hey, watch out! Hey, watch out!
So that's how it sounds. As I said, I think the SPO itself, there's a little bit more to do with that, especially with this last low-pass filter that I put in. I have been looking through all the filter stages. There is basically no wraparounds. There is no clipping, those kind of things. So it's pretty much very close to the original. At least what I see from the manual here. If there is anything else I have not taken into account, then it would be very hard for me to figure out. But anyways, so that was a presentation of the second generation G-port Mylstar's card. You've heard the sounds. I hope they recorded somehow nicely on this mobile phone that I'm having here for recording. Let me know and drop me a line if you think that I'm off somewhere. Okay? Yeah. Goodbye.